Picture yourself driving through a quiet New Zealand suburb on a late summer evening. Windows cracked, cicadas buzzing in the dusk. You glance at neat lawns, warm lights behind curtains, a scene so ordinary you almost sigh with contentment. Now imagine the next morning you hear that in one of those tidy homes, a mother and her 2 young daughters were found murdered, the walls streaked with terror. Your heartbeat shifts, doesn't it? That chill in your chest is where our story begins. You are about to step into the Lundy family house in Palmerston North. August 29th, 2000. Christine Lundy, 40, and her daughters Amber, 7, and 2-year-old Jaylin lie dead. Police say the attack was frenzied and brutal, carried out with a weapon so forceful it left deep, crushing wounds. No weapon is found, no fingerprints, no clear DNA trail, just devastation and questions. When detectives knock on doors, you expect the usual search for strangers. Instead, within days, the focus swivels to someone you wouldn't expect at first glance. Mark Lundy, the husband and father who claims he was 140 kilometers away on a business trip. You might wonder, how did the investigation pivot so decisively? Police discover phone records showing Mark made a call to Christine at 8:03 p.m. He says he was in Petone, just outside Wellington, talking from a motel room where he had checked in around 5:30. He ordered dinner, spoke to clients, then allegedly settled in for the night. Straightforward alibi, right? But officers test the drive. Under perfect conditions, you could race from Petone to Palmerston North in roughly 1 hour and 50 minutes. If Mark left the motel after that phone call, committed the murders quickly, and sped back before dawn, the timeline just barely fits. Barely, yet fatally, that word hovers. Forensic teams scour Mark's car and clothing. On a polo shirt, tiny specks look suspicious. Standard DNA tests fail to clarify, so scientists slice the flecks into microscopic slivers. Under the microscope, they spot structures resembling human brain tissue. Brain tissue? You almost gasp. It is the sensational twist that will grip newspapers for the next 2 decades. The Crown insists those flecks came from Christine's skull during a wild attack. The defense argues contamination, misidentification, even plain old human error. After all, histology, identifying tissue by sight alone, relies on expert judgment that can falter. 2 years after the murders, prosecutors present their case. You sit in the public gallery listening. They paint Mark as a husband collapsing under debt, desperate for insurance money. They highlight his allegedly secret life of sex workers and expensive wines, suggesting a motive rooted in shame and financial ruin. They show jurors the polo shirt under harsh light, playing and replaying the expert who swears those specks are central nervous system cells. They reconstruct the late-night drive, arguing Mark could have gunned his Ford Fairmont northbound, swapped to a mountain bike hidden near the house, crept inside, killed, then reversed the journey before sunrise. It sounds almost cinematic, doesn't it? That very cinematic feel both fascinates and unsettles you. Defense counsel urges you to slow down. They remind the court that no blood, no fibers, no fingerprints from the scene match Mark. They hammer at the brain tissue claim, pointing out that the slides were prepared with kitchen utensils in a police lab not designed for pathology. They question why officers never located the supposed bike or murder weapon. They show Mark weeping on the witness stand, describing his last chat with Christine, how she told him to land the sales contract and come home. You examine his face. Is that grief or acting? The ambiguity gnaws at you. The jury deliberates for 16 hours. When they file back, the nation holds its breath. Guilty on 2 counts of murder. Mark collapses, sobbing. Reporters stream live from the courthouse. Headlines scream monstrous father, wicked motive, justice served. Yet as Mark begins a 20-year sentence, dissenters stir. Skeptical journalists ask whether histology alone should lock someone away. International pathologists call the brain fragment identification unsound. You sense the national mood shifting from satisfaction to unease. Fast forward to 2012. New Zealand's Court of Appeal reviews fresh expert reports challenging the tissue evidence. One American professor bluntly states the slides show degraded muscle, not brain. Another notes that even if it were brain, cross-contamination from embalmed samples in the same lab could explain it. The judges quash the convictions and order a retrial. Mark emerges from prison after more than a decade, hugging relatives under flashbulbs. Imagine that rush of air, the dizzying taste of hope. But freedom is provisional. A second trial looms in 2015, and prosecutors refuse to abandon the brain tissue cornerstone. They add a new witness, a Dutch scientist who uses mRNA testing to affirm the cells are brain beyond doubt. You listen to cross-examination as defense experts counter that the mRNA markers degrade rapidly outside the body, rendering results unreliable after hours, let alone days. Science feels suddenly subjective, molded by whoever pays for the lab work. Timeline arguments evolve too. The Crown now suggests Mark left Petone around 7:15, earlier than in the first trial, because a neighbour heard high-pitched screams at 7:15:45. They concede the drive was tight, but claim aggressive speeding could shave minutes. Defence attorneys reconstruct the route with traffic data showing congestion that night, arguing the trip was impossible without drawing police attention. You ride that virtual highway yourself, mentally counting intersections, imagining speed cameras flashing. Does the math work? You're unsure. Outside court, the public conversation turns fierce. Talk radio hosts ask why no direct evidence ties Mark to the scene. Some callers brand him a cold-blooded killer. Others see a persecuted man adored by his supporters. Social media polarizes. Team innocent, team guilty. Hashtags rage. You might scroll through threads at midnight, absorbing theories about a burglary gone wrong, or claims Christine's brother framed Mark. The noise is deafening, yet compelling. Back inside the courtroom, the jury again retreats. Days later, they announce another guilty verdict. Mark's shoulders slump. He is sentenced to life, non-parole period 20 years. One juror later tells a journalist that the brain tissue slides were decisive. Hearing that, you feel a wave of déjà vu, as though history has doubled back on itself, looping in forensic uncertainty. Appeals continue, reaching the Privy Council in London. Judges there review cell phone data, car computer records, even the angle of streetlights along State Highway 1. They uphold the conviction, stating the totality of evidence remains powerful. Yet they concede the case is circumstantial and acknowledge lingering doubt about the science. That paradox captures why this story refuses to settle. You might turn off the news, but the question sticks. If even judges admit unease, how confident can you be? Meanwhile, forensic science advances. New protocols demand multiple confirmatory tests for tissue typing. Digital mapping of vehicle movements, once speculative, becomes routine through satellite logs. Looking back, you ask whether the original investigators had the tools we now take for granted. Would modern tech have undone or cemented the narrative? What would laser scan crime scene models show about blood spatter angles, about entry points, about the force of each blow? Each hypothetical spins more uncertainty. Families involved bear real scars. Christine's relatives attend commemorations each August, releasing candles on a lake while cameras flash. Mark's sister maintains a website proclaiming his innocence, posting transcripts, encouraging forensic students to analyze the slides for coursework. You see how a single tragedy can branch into countless personal crusades, a living case study for law schools, podcasts, documentaries. If you study law or forensic science, the Lundy case becomes a cautionary tale. You learn that expert evidence can sway juries beyond its true reliability. You realize that once a story crystallizes, desperate husband, insurance motive, secret drive, it proves hard to unhear. You confront your own biases, asking whether you subconsciously found Mark suspicious because he cried too hard on television or not hard enough. That moment of introspection might be the most valuable lesson the case offers. So where does that leave you tonight? Perhaps driving the same route from Petone to Palmerston North, headlights slicing the dark. You pass rolling fields, roadside cafes closing for the night, speed signs blinking. You catch yourself checking the clock, testing the prosecution's timeline in real time. You imagine a car hurtling ahead of you 15 years earlier, its driver wrestling with dread or rage or innocence. The road offers no answers, just asphalt unspooling into shadow. As you pull into your driveway, you recognize the nagging tension between legal verdict and personal doubt. The justice system demands finality, yet the human mind craves certainty, and those are not the same. You remember those microscope slides, those contested cells, those jurors who weighed them twice. You recall Christine, Amber, and Jaylin, whose voices were silenced, and Mark, whose voice persists behind prison walls. You realize the Lundy Family Massacre is not just a true crime headline, but a mirror held up to every listener who thinks evidence is always clear and truth always singular. And here is the takeaway you carry forward. Whenever you hear a case summarized in 2 sentences, pause. Ask what assumptions underpin the narrative. What science was pushed to its limits? What timelines were bent to fit a theory? Doubt can be uncomfortable, yet it is the engine of justice. Keep that engine running, because the next verdict the nation reaches might depend on your willingness to question the story you are told.